I'm Julie Herman of Jaybird Quilts, and welcome back to the Joy Sew Along. We are working on building our Joy table runner. In our last video, we went ahead and pieced our J block. Here's my J that I made. And today we are going to work on piecing our letter O. So let's get started. For our O block, we'll need 1 hexagon, 4 half triangles, 2 right, 2 left, and 6 half hexagons. The half hexagons kind of go around the hexagon as if they spin. Today we're going to work on piecing this block, and we're going to learn how to do a partial seam. Partial seam is not as complicated as a Y seam. If you've never done one, it can seem intimidating, but it's really not that hard. If you have decided to do any fussy cutting like I did, now is the time to double check your placement to make sure something is not upside down or sideways. So for instance, this menorah, I want to make sure all the candles are pointed up. So if I had accidentally placed that piece over here, they'd be on their side. That's not a natural way for candles. So I want to make sure that I have this piece where I had intended it. We are going to begin following our directions, and if you don't have these, please make sure you click on the link in the caption below so that you can get the free pattern to make the Joy table runner. We're going to begin with our center hexagon and this half hexagon. So I'm just going to kind of move some other stuff out of the way. And what we're going to do is we're going to flip it onto here, and our blunt end here and our line here are what's going to line up with here and here. And we are going to sew half of this seam. So it's a little bit more than 2 inches, so we're going to sew a little bit more than an inch. We want to make sure we don't sew the full seam. If we sew the full seam, when we go to put our last one in, we're going to have to inset that, and that's going to be harder. So if we only sew part of it, we'll be able to move our way around, eventually add this piece, and then finish this seam. It's shown in the diagrams for the pattern. So we're going to head on over to the sewing machine and begin by just sewing part of this seam. I'm over here at my machine, and as I showed you, I lined this up. It is longer, don't worry about that. That's what we will get to when we finish putting all the pieces. Right now, we're just going to focus on sewing half of this seam. It doesn't need to be exactly half. You just want to make sure you don't sew too much of it, but exactly where you end at this point is not of great concern. So just kind of eyeball it, and then go ahead and remove your piece. And I am still going to sew onto my leader ender. I find that that really helps me avoid not getting that nest of threads down there. So now that I have sewn half of that seam, not worrying about the right now, we're going to focus on the left. We're going to be building from the left. So we're going to go ahead and flip this over, finger press this. I'm going to use my seam roller that I used a few days ago to make my letter J. And now I have this unit. So I'm going to head back on over to my design wall to show you how we're going to continue to build this letter O. I've gone ahead and completed step 1, which is to sew part of this. And we're going to move on to step 2. For step 2, we're going to take the next half hexagon going counterclockwise. And we're going to put this piece onto here. And we're not going to worry about that. I know it feels very unnatural. Don't worry about it. So we're going to take this piece, and it should line up perfectly, as you see that it does, from here to here. We're going to go ahead and sew our same scant 1/4 inch that we used for our letter J and for beginning our letter O to sew this piece, and then press this seam open. So I'm back over at my machine, and I'm going to go ahead and place this. If you find it helpful, you can go ahead and take a couple pins to pin this in place. It can feel a little unnatural the way that that is hanging off, so sometimes pins can help you feel a little more comfortable. I'm just going to go ahead and put 2. One near either end. You also don't have to pin this if you don't feel like you need to. And we're simply going to sew the complete length of this seam. So the first one is the only one that we're sewing partial. Go nice and slow, make sure we don't flip anything. Pull out our pins as we go. Never want to sew over pins. You can have them to the left of the needle. You just don't want the needle to intersect with the pin. It can break the needle, it can break the pin, it can mess with your sewing machine. Things can break and fly at you. Overall, just not a good habit to have. So that is the upper left piece. So just like we did with that partial seam, we're going to press this seam open. And we're going to continue in this manner, adding one piece counterclockwise around the letter until we have completed it. So as I mentioned, we are going to continue counterclockwise. So this is the next piece. And at this point, I've just finger pressed. I think I'm going to get my iron turned on after I do this piece to make sure everything stays nice and flat. But we're going to go ahead and place this piece just as we did the previous one and head back on over to the machine to sew that in place. I apologize. In my excitement of coming back on over here to the machine, I didn't realize that my camera wasn't turned on. So I showed you how we are going to align that over there, and I've already sewn half the seam before I realized that. Apologize. So I'm going to finish sewing the length of this seam. It is just like the previous one. So yeah, I make mistakes too. I'm human just like everybody else. And now that is the third piece, and that is the leftmost piece. So as I mentioned, I am going to turn my iron on, and I'm going to head on over to my pressing station to press all of the seams that I've sewn so far to keep everything nice and flat before I continue building my O block. I'm over at my pressing station. I've gone ahead and turned my iron on, and I just want to give these a light press, make sure things stay nice and flat as I continue to add my pieces. It's not really important that anything is flat over here right now. I'm mainly concerned with this because that is where my next piece is going to go. So just going to give a simple press. And as I mentioned a few days ago when we sewed the letter J, pressing is up and down, ironing is back and forth. That can stretch our bias. We don't want to iron. We just want to go up and down. You can do a slight wiggle and get that nice and flat. And then I'm going to turn it back here. The letter O is one that I find, because all the pieces are so similar, it can be easy to get turned around. And if you have something fussy cut that you want to make sure stays where it is, or you want to make sure that you're doing your 3 fabrics here, your other 3 there, it's very helpful to come back to your design wall. I have made the mistake of taking all my pieces over to my sewing machine and just going for it and then finding out that I put something in the wrong place. So the letter O is one that I definitely like to come back and forth to make sure that I keep things in place. As you can see, I have 2 fabrics here. This is my fabric A, if you want to call it, or fabric 1 and fabric 2, but they're not that different from each other. This one has the little stars in the background, and this one has the blue florals, but they both are very similar, dark navy, so it's really easy to accidentally do something like this over the machine when we're moving quick and not paying close attention. So I'm going to keep coming back to my laid out pieces on my little design wall pressing station over here. So the next piece I'm going to add is the 4th one, and I'm going to go head on over to my sewing machine, make sure my camera's turned on so that I can go ahead and piece that seam for you. So I'm back here over at my sewing machine, and I'm going to line this piece up and sew the length of this seam. So it all should seem very familiar at this point. After we do that first partial seam, we piece the next 5 on in a very similar manner, and then I will show you how we finish that first seam. So in a little bit of a rinse and repeat, we're going to press this one open and add the next piece. Lay it back out, make sure we're good. Get this next piece, line it up, and go piece that one on. So same process to add the 5th half hexagon. And at this point I'm not pinning. I did pin that second one because things were kind of a little looser with that first partial seam, but I find after that first seam that I don't need to continue to pin at this point. We're going to go ahead and press this 5th one, and then we're going to add our 6th one. And the 6th is going to be done in the same manner as the previous ones. We just need to make sure that we keep our first one out of the way until we're ready to complete that seam. So I'll show you what that looks like. So again, at this point, we only have one left, so hopefully it is the right one. If it's not, time to get the seam ripper out. So we're going to piece this one here. So we just need to make sure that we kind of flip that one out of the way. Just imagine that it's not even there, and we're going to flip this one on, and it will line up just the same as the previous ones did. So we're going to head on over to the machine to add that 6th one. As I mentioned, we're going to fold this one out of the way. If you find it's getting in the way, it could be helpful to just take a pin and pin it out of the way just to make sure it doesn't get caught up in any way. And you can sew this one from the front, which is what I've been doing with all of them. Or if you find it's easier to keep this out of the way, you can sew this from the back, whichever way works best for you. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and finger press this. I'm going to flip it back to the front. Take this pin out if you have pinned that in place. And to finish the center of our O, which is step 5, we need to just complete this seam. So now you see that we have the full length, and this will perfectly line up. So it felt a little funny in the beginning, but now you understand why. So we're going to lay these flat together, and it won't lay perfectly flat because you have a seam over here that is sewn with another piece. You just need to get it flat to the point of where we started. And I will often pin this starting point just to make sure things stay nice and perfectly lined up. And we're going to sew from there, and we want to overlap a couple stitches. You don't need to go obviously all the way to the seam. You couldn't go because of where the other one intersects, but you just want to go a couple stitches just to kind of lock it in place. You can also backstitch when you get there if you would like. A couple stitches, take my pin out because I don't want to sew over my pin. And I'm just going to keep it nice and flat till I get to where I started sewing. And this is again where a stiletto can come in handy to keep that seam down nice and flat. And if you find that it's bubbling at all, you can just stretch one piece or the other to make them want to go together a little better. So I'm just going to go over a couple, and I can go back, raise my needle and my foot. If your machine has an automatic thread cutter, you could use that here. I don't use that very often because I like to go back onto my leader ender. And so that is what that now looks like. So that is where I overlapped everything. And so now, once I open this up a little bit, I have the center of my O completed. So I'm going to head on over to the iron to press that and show you how we're going to finish our block. I now have completed sewing the center of my block, and I need to press my last few seams that have not been pressed yet with my iron. I'm just going to carefully do them one at a time. There's no race here. I want to make sure that I am just going up and down. There's a lot of bias here. It can be tempting to just want to push, but right now the outside, almost all of the outside edges are bias that we're working with here. So, or I guess about half of them. So we really don't want to stretch them because we're almost at the finish line of the letter O. And once I've pressed on the back, I will generally press on the front. And at this point, your block is a perfect hexagon. And so again, alignment matters, where you very easily, before sewing these outside pieces on, could accidentally turn. So you want to make sure that you keep it in the alignment that you want it. So I'm going to continue to follow the directions. Step 6 is what is next, which is to sew on the 2 right half triangles. So we're going to sew them on the bottom right and top left. We're going to line them up here. You can cut those points off if that helps you as well. And then after we sew those, we'll press and sew the next 2. We're going to begin with the first 2. I'm just going to loosely pin the first one or the second one in place so that I don't lose track of which side it's going to go on, since I have them both laid in place. I'm not going to actually pin for sewing, so I'm just going to double check my alignment here and sew this half triangle in place. Once you get the center of the O block done, the outside comes together very quickly with the 4 half triangles to create your rectangular O block. It's going to be 8.5 inches tall by a little more than 8.5 inches wide. It's a very random number on the width, so I have not provided that information on the width of the letters since they're not standard measurements. Again, so that half triangle. And we just need to press these both open before we can add the final two half triangles to complete the block. I'm just going to press them open and then head on over to the iron. So I have these finger pressed, so I'm just going to flip it over and give it a good press with my iron. I want to make sure these two pieces are nice and flat so that I can properly add my final two half triangles. And if you're wondering why I call them half triangles when they clearly do have three sides and are technically still a triangle, the answer is because of the right and left. It makes it easier to refer to one as the right and one as the left since they are the mirror images of each other. And when put together, if you did sew them straight together, they do make a complete 60-degree triangle. So as my math teacher has pointed out, they are still technically triangles. I am well aware of that. Just half triangles, the best name to give them for the purposes of quilting. So we're going to go ahead and put these both on. And in this case, again, we don't really have anything to align them with now that we've sewn over that part. So I'm going to go over to the machine and use my mini hexagon to cut these sharp points off before I sew these last two pieces in place. So as I mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and trim those off like I did a few days ago with the letter J. So I'm simply going to line it up. And I can use my hexagon, my sidekick, super sidekick, or my mini hexagon. I keep this one by the machine because it is nice and handy to have over here. But all of them will do this. I'm just going to line up my two straight sides. That way I know that I'm perfectly trimming off just my 1/4 inch triangle here. Makes for good confetti if you hold on to them and you end up with a big pile of them. Makes for a nice little confetti. So I'm simply going to now line these up, and now that I have that blunt point, I know exactly where it's going to line up. Just going to stick a pin to hold that in place. And here at the end, it is technically lining up this end with what is pressed under here, but it can be hard to see basically through a piece. And there's a tiny little piece that overhangs, so that's why having this end lined up with the blunt point is incredibly helpful. So I'm going to pin the other one in place as well. As I've mentioned a few times, this is a puzzle. These pieces are perfectly designed to fit together. So if something is not fitting, take a pause, something's off. Rachel and I are both here to help. If you have questions, please ask them in the comments here of the video, or we have a Facebook group for all of our sew-alongs, and the Facebook group is full of thousands of people who are often working on the same thing at the same time, and they're incredibly supportive. So we can answer your question, the two of us, as well as plenty of other people in the group are here to help. My goal is for you to be as successful as possible, so please do not feel like you're out hanging out on your own little island if you are struggling in any way. We are here to help you be as successful as you can be. Just going to repeat to finish the last one. I now have my completed O block, and I'm going to go ahead and press it. And this is definitely one of those where I think this will press much better when I do turn the steam on. These fabrics, for some reason, these darker blues seem to be a little bit stiffer than the lighter blues that I was working with, and they don't want to go down as well without steam. So I will definitely be turning steam on later to give this block a good pressing, but I'm getting it flat enough right now. So now we have completed our O block. Again, just like we did a few days ago with the J, give yourself a pat on the back for a job well done. And I will be back in a few days to show you how to do the last letter of this project, which is the Y. Again, if you have questions, please ask them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please comment and like and subscribe. All those things are really helpful. I enjoy providing this free content to you, and the more you interact with the channel, the more it helps me out. It's this great mutual relationship.